What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a new video. This is one that a lot of you have probably been waiting for a long time. This video is all about Moluccan scrub pythons. So it's probably one of the rarest species of scrub python in the hobby and probably the most sought after for very obvious reasons. They are absolutely gorgeous. They get a really nice, large, impressive size and are usually pretty placid for their entire lives. So I'm going to show you guys every Moluccan scrub python in my collection today, show just how variable these snakes are and how amazing they are as well. All right, couldn't think of a better snake to start off this video with. This guy right here is my first ever Moluccan scrub python. I got this guy as a baby when I was a junior in high school. And from that point on, I already knew I was obsessed with these snakes, but this guy just kind of confirmed that a little more. So this species is primarily collected from Ambon and Ceram. And they are one of the larger types of scrub pythons, with adults getting about the same size as Amethystina, so average of about 10 feet, exceptional animals getting 12, sometimes even 13 feet long. Their biggest physical difference is in their girth, essentially, and then their head structure. Moluccan scrub pythons, in my opinion at least, are the heaviest bodied of all of the scrub pythons. That's obviously, relatively speaking, nowhere near the girth of a reticulated python or a Burmese python or something like that, but definitely thicker than your Amethystina or your Halmahera's, your Tannenbars, etc. Then they also have this really beefy head that they will kind of mature into. That head structure doesn't really start to form until they're about 6 years old or so. And then once they're full-grown adults, they really have very prominent heads. Some people will try to say that these are kind of like an island dwarf type of scrub python. That's most certainly not the case, though. I've heard of wild accounts of animals that are 14 feet long. It doesn't necessarily mean that they all achieve that size, but without a doubt, adult size on this species is not 6 or 7 feet long. So definitely, if you keep Moluccan scrub pythons, feed them the way you'd feed any other python. Scrub pythons are very susceptible to complications due to stunting. So where some species of pythons can be grown very slowly into adulthood without much of an issue, scrub pythons are most certainly not that way, where if you underfeed them too much when they're young, frankly, it will often shorten their lifespan significantly. With all that not fun stuff said, though, let's talk about some fun stuff about Moluccan scrub pythons. In my experience, at least, their behavior is typically pretty chill, much like this guy. Very, very strong feeding response, like all scrub pythons, but sometimes these guys can kind of stand out from the rest of them with how crazy they go for food sometimes. But once they're out of the enclosure and know that food isn't around, they really are very interactive snakes. And nothing like a big adult Moluccan scrub python that is very calm and interactive, like this guy right here. With all that said, though, there's a lot more where he came from, so I'm going to go grab the next Moluccan in line. We'll talk about some of the phenotype differences you can see within this species. So this here is another one of my male Moluccan scrub pythons. He's about a year younger than the one I just previously showed you, and you can see some of the differences the year makes in some of their physical structure. His head is a lot smaller than the male you just previously saw, and his body is slimmer overall as well. A snake like this is definitely a full-grown adult, and one of this size, I'm feeding a snake like this maybe once a month at the absolute most throughout most of the year, and then he's getting a nice little fast in the winter as well. So once they hit this size, really their need for food is pretty minimal, and if anything, you actually need to restrict their food. As scrub pythons get to adulthood, they become prone to obesity if they are continued to be fed at the rate at which they were when they were young. So something to consider as a scrub python keeper is how your diet and nutrition for them will change over time. Another thing that's interesting about him comparing to the last male are his pattern differences. So this guy is on the more patternless side as far as Moluccan scrub pythons go. The variety within this species doesn't really come into play in terms of their color, but a lot more in their pattern. So obviously there are the normal phase, is the Axanthic phase as well. But within either phase, it seems like there is not a whole lot of variation in the actual color itself. When it comes to pattern, though, you have individuals that are more mottled or kind of like a diamond pattern like that last male you saw. One like this that is almost entirely patternless up until the tail pattern kicks in. There are striped Moluccan scrub pythons as well, and some that almost have a cool banded pattern to them, which I do not have any of those individuals in my collection, but I sure hope to be able to have some in the future. So it's cool to see the variety in a species like this. Personally, one of my favorite aspects of them. But that color alone, that's what makes these guys It's truly just, I mean, in my opinion, probably the most beautiful naturally occurring python in the entire world. And people want these for good reason, and I'm really glad that I have them. With all that said, I'm gonna bring out the next one for you guys. So this here is my only Axanthic Malukan that I have right now. As many of you probably know, Moluccan Scrub Pythons, as far as we know, come in two pretty distinctive color phases. The yellow, normal, gold Malucans are the ones that are most common, but then Axanthic Malukans have popped up in the wild plenty of times. They exist in plenty of captive collections. So it's definitely not an uncommon trait. It does seem to be present genetically in lots of different, or in many Moluccan scrubs. A lot of people will kind of hate on the Axanthic Malukans a little bit because, you know, the thing that makes them so spectacular is that golden coloration. And obviously, if you make that into Axanthic, you fully take that away. I love both of them personally. I love some of the blue hues that the Axanthics will have, especially while they're young. Captive bred ones do seem to retain that a bit into adulthood as well, which I think is really, really neat. So for me, I like having both in the collection. This female right here is spectacular. She's about 3 years old, so hopefully in a couple of years she'll be ready to breed. Hatching out some little Axanthic babies would be a dream come true. So this here is my biggest female Moluccan Scrub Python, and she's not really all that large. She's probably about 9.5 feet long. So definitely I would say on the smaller end of the adult spectrum. But with that said, she is definitely a full-grown snake. I don't anticipate her to get any bigger than this. And frankly, I think if she did, it would probably be to her detriment a little bit. So kind of what I was saying in that last clip about the color shift into adulthood, it happens a lot more extreme with females. So as many of you probably know, when scrub pythons are developing follicles or when they're gravid, they darken up significantly. And then following their first shed after laying their clutch, their colors come back to almost completely normal. So Moluccan scrubs do that in a bit more of an extreme case where females will get a lot darker than their normal coloration while they're gravid and developing follicles. And then it seems that they never really fully come back to where they previously were. Kind of is as evident with this girl right here. So she is looking about as dark right now as she typically will. I do believe she may be about a week or so out from going into a shed cycle. So once she sheds out, she will be a bit lighter than this. But then this obviously is about a bit darker than what she would have been earlier in life. With that said, though, she still is very beautiful. What's cool about her compared to some other of the Moluccans that I have is that her gold is much kind of like more of a pale coloration than the rest of them. I do almost wonder if that has something to do with maybe a collection site difference. So I like a locality difference in the coloration. Could also be just natural variety. It's really hard to say. I feel like you have to kind of probably go over there and actually see animals in the wild yourself to come to that conclusion fully. But with that said, another absolutely gorgeous snake, great temperament on her as well. And you know, a good example of how they don't all necessarily get huge. Some of them can get pretty big as adults, but other ones can be just like this, where 9 to 10 feet is where they're going to end up in the long run, which is, I feel like, pretty manageable for a lot of keepers. All right, so here, last but not least, this is my biggest male, and he's probably my biggest snake in the entire collection. He's all of about 12 feet long, and he is an absolute beast of a snake. So like I was saying, Moluccan Scrub Pythons can achieve quite the large size, but it's very rare to see one larger than this. So if you think that this is a snake that is manageable for you, then it's probably about the extent that you'll ever get out of one of these guys. So this guy's really cool. He's fairly patternless throughout his body, and then his tail is still pretty purple. It's pretty cool to see into adulthood with them. Like I was saying about that color change, still really vibrant on his sides. And again, like the rest of them, really, really good demeanor as well. So to me, having a large scrub python like this that is as chill as he is really kind of like a peak experience as a snake keeper. Part of why I became so fascinated with this genus of snakes the way that I did is individuals like this guy right here. Such a badass snake, one that I hopefully can get babies from one of these days down the line. I have unfortunately not yet been able to successfully reproduce Moluccan Scrub Pythons, but inevitably it'll happen at some point. So until then, I'm just gonna enjoy keeping these guys and experiencing what I think is one of the most incredible python species in the world. All right, everybody, thank you for watching that video. If you liked it, please subscribe here on the YouTube channel, like, comment, share, hit that notification bell so you never miss a new upload. I put out a new video every single Friday here on the channel. You can find me on Instagram at Scrub Shepherd, Stephen Cush on Facebook, Cush Reptile on Morph Market, And I have a podcast every Wednesday night on the Trap Talk Reptile Network called Cush's Corner. It's at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. All the links to all that is down in the description below. I also want to shout out the Somalia Facebook group. It's a group for anybody who loves scrub pythons, Boelen's pythons, really the entire Somalia genus, and is for keepers and enthusiasts at absolutely every level possible, not just for keepers and breeders. So if you're interested in these snakes, I would highly recommend checking out that group on Facebook. We really have a great community we've built over there. With all that said, thank you guys for checking this out. We'll catch you all back here next week for a new video.